Good evening and welcome to Home Media Minefield, helping you with information to navigate the complexities of home cinema and home media entertainment. And for today's episode, I'm going to be looking at the 60th anniversary 4K release of Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 masterpiece based on the novel by Robert Bloch. And we're going to look into this right now. So to start with, the packaging. I've already done an unboxing video that you can find on this, but for this special 60th anniversary re-release and the first time with the film in 4K, Universal have released this as a Steelbook, which is the version I have here. It's also available in standard packaging as well as part of the Alfred Hitchcock Collection on 4K, which also includes Rear Window, Vertigo and The Birds. Now I'll be doing a review on each of those films at a later date on this channel. So first up, before we get into the usual bits and pieces on this is presented with two versions of the film. The Psycho that we've been used to seeing, and also an uncut version, which is the version that Alfred Hitchcock wanted way back in 1960 before the censors asked him to make a few changes to it. Now, the changes to this are not huge. We are only talking about less than a minute's worth of changes, but essentially it involves more on the voyeuristic scene where Norman Bates looks at Marion Crane changing. We linger a little bit longer on that. We also hold on the shot of the blood on Norman Bates's hands much longer than in the standard version. And lastly, without wanting to give too much in the spoiler area, but the stairway scene that involves Arbogast has some extra stabs included there. It's only really these things that significantly change the film to what has been released previously, and chances are most people won't even notice these differences, but it is nice that we are getting a more complete Alfred Hitchcock vision for this release of it. Now on to the picture quality. Universal have done an amazing job with this 4K transfer of the film. I watched it and I was blown away by how clear this film looks. This is a film I've watched many times and I've owned on Blu-ray and DVD previously, but for this 4K remastering, the detail is really strong. You can see lots of detail. I particularly noticed people's eyes, but also clothing. You could actually see the materials of the clothing, which was very clear. Universal have gone with standard HDR. There is no Dolby or HDR Plus on this, but again, the high dynamic range allows you to really pick out all of the details in the contrast on this black and white film. So again, all of the details that Alfred Hitchcock has in the composition of his shots and placement of things in the shadows is all very clear here. So I was really blown away by the picture quality of this 4K re-release. Next up, with the audio, there is a new DTS-X track on this. Now, the audio in Psycho is very deliberate, as Hitchcock was with everything. The place where I first noticed the significant changes to the soundtrack here was when it started raining. Wherever there was the scenes where the rain was involved, you were completely immersed, and it literally did sound like the rain was coming down all around you. The audio is very crisp and clear and easy to understand. Purists will be pleased to know though that the mono original soundtrack is also included on this as a 2.0 soundtrack. So, you know, one could argue that this is the correct way to watch Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, but as I said, the fact that they include the mono soundtrack as well as the new DTS-X mix, I think, pleases everyone. Now when it comes to the special features, there is nothing new here that didn't already exist on the 50th anniversary release of the film, which is a shame. However, the extras included are very, very comprehensive and worth listening to. First up, there's an audio commentary by Stephen Rebello, who was the author of Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho. Now this commentary is incredibly informative. It goes into a lot of detail, not only on the production, but also the careers of the individual actors, stories from the set, and deals with a lot of what Psycho has left as a legacy with other filmmakers and cinema goers throughout the last 60 years. So the audio commentary, I believe, was actually recorded in 1997, but all of the information there is incredibly relevant still today. So a very, very interesting and engaging audio commentary by Stephen Rebello. Next up, there's a 95-minute documentary, again from 1997, simply called The Making of Psycho. This goes through the entire production history, right from Hitchcock originally reading the novel by Robert Bloch and getting the options for that, right the way through the production, why he chose to film it the way he did, etc., and has interviews from many of the cast and crew members in retrospect, talking about their experiences working with the great Alfred Hitchcock and the legacy that this film has following it. Now this is the kind of documentary, it's multi-part, and it's the kind of documentary that I wish all movies had with them. You then get a 10-minute featurette called Psycho Sound, and this looks at the 5.1 remastering that was done for the DVD and Blu-ray release of Psycho, and how they went to taking the various track elements and putting it into that mix. Now obviously this has been updated for the 4K release into a DTS-X mix, but this, as I said, covers the 5.1 mix that was done. It's a very interesting documentary for anybody that likes the sound side of films and is interested in what goes into the remastering for the home cinema releases. Next up, you get a 25-minute featurette, which I believe was filmed back in 2008, called In the Master's Shadow, Hitchcock's Legacy. And this is fantastic because this has got interviews with filmmakers such as Martin Scorsese, William Friedkin, Eli Roth, John Carpenter and Joe Carnahan, just to name a few, where they talk about Hitchcock and the importance that he has on cinema and the influences that he has made on other filmmakers throughout their career. Obviously they reference things such as Spielberg and De Palma having borrowed from the master of suspense, and Scorsese himself talks about how he used some of the shots and editing style in his film Raging Bull, which was also filmed in black and white, how much of the boxing scenes in that mirrored the shower scene from Psycho specifically. So that was very interesting to hear. Also William Friedkin talks about the influence on the narrative of To Live and Die in LA as being a reference. But they talk about all of Hitchcock's films and how Hitchcock has had an influence on everything from horror movies through to the Bourne series of films. You then get 15 minutes of audio put over scenes from the film of Alfred Hitchcock being interviewed by the French filmmaker Francois Truffaut. These interviews were conducted in 1962 and it's very interesting to hear the questions. Obviously there's a translator involved in between. It is interesting to hear Truffaut, a film master himself, talk to the great master of suspense about many of his choices in the filming of Psycho, and anybody that hasn't heard any of these interviews or read any of these interviews and is interested in filmmaking, these Hitchcock Truffaut interviews are well worth your time to listen to and invest in. You then get an 8-minute featurette called The Release of Psycho, and this is newsreel footage about when the film opened, with footage of people queuing outside the cinema. Again, in some respects this was an early blockbuster, in order to see the film and all of the information that went around it in terms of keeping the secret and not spoiling it for future audiences. Then we have a short piece which is the shower scene with and without music, and this is also quite fascinating because Bernard Herrmann's score is obviously so iconic and adds so much to the film, but when you do watch it without the music, the brutality of that scene seems even harder. So again, an interesting little experiment to see that scene with and without the music. Then you also get a short feature on Saul Bass's storyboards for the shower scene, and it does a storyboard comparison with his drawings to the shot product. You also get all of the posters and ads around Psycho put into a little featurette, and you can even browse through the lobby cards and photographs from Psycho, which include both production and behind the scenes stills. And to round this off, you get the theatrical trailers, and you also get the re-release trailers. Now, this often gets a little bit repetitive, but it's good that they've included all of this information there. Now, the one thing I do wish was included on this is I wish they had a new featurette that would have covered the remastering of this film into the 4K edition that we have here. It would have been really nice if there had been something added to talk a little bit about that, and just update some of the material that was already on here, but sadly there isn't that. There is also nothing that talks about the comparison between the theatrical cut and the uncut version, but as I've already mentioned, those comparisons are very minimal anyway. So all in all, that rounds out my review for the 4K 60th anniversary edition of Psycho. This is a fantastic disc, well worth investing in for the improvements in picture and sound quality alone, but still includes a very comprehensive list of special features that were indeed on the previous releases. Steelbook is a limited edition and is very nice to get hold of if you only want this one film. However, for the extra money, the Hitchcock box set, which includes, as I said, Rear Window, Vertigo and The Birds, 3 other excellent films, is worth that investment as well if you're into those Hitchcock films and you want to see them in the best picture and audio quality to date. And that brings me to the end of another home media minefield. If you did indeed find this information useful and helpful, then please do like and consider subscribing to the channel, and also share and spread the word. That all helps. If you've got any questions or comments as well, please do put that in the comment section below, and do remember to hit the bell icon so that you don't miss anything moving forward. I'm posting videos on a weekly basis at the moment, so if there's any particular film, TV show, etc. that you'd like me to cover, then put that down in the notes below and I will see what I can do. But as far as today goes, I wish you a good night.